Welcome back, everyone. The U.S. officially classifies Hamas as a terrorist organization, as do Israel, the EU, and Egypt, among others. But is the world's view of Hamas changing? Alan Dershowitz is back with us, and we're joined by Reza Aslan. He's a professor at UC Riverside and the author of Zealot. Well, let's go first to my colleague Jake Tapper in Jerusalem. Jake.
Thanks, Allison. Reza, I want to ask you, Israeli officials have repeatedly told me that the onus is on Hamas to prove that it can hold to a ceasefire and stop the attacks. And if the organization wants to be taken seriously on the world stage, I think the question is, don't they need to act accordingly?
Yes, Jake. I'm sorry, but if I may, if I could just respond to Professor Dershowitz and what he has on numerous occasions referred to as Hamas's dead baby strategy, or what Benjamin Netanyahu refers to as the problem of telegenetically dead Palestinians. The problem with this rhetoric isn't so much that it's been repeatedly debunked by Amnesty International, by Human Rights Watch, by the United Nations, by a slew of journalists on the ground in Gaza. The problem with this rhetoric is that it seeks to deliberately dehumanize Palestinians by stripping them of their most basic human impulse, the protection of their children, all in the name of some kind of ideological loyalty to the state of Israel. And it has to stop if we're going to move forward. It's time to stop blaming the victim. The only person responsible for the death of a civilian in a war is the person who pulled the trigger.
Go ahead. Hold on, Reza. Let Alan get in there. Alan?
Let me prove that that's not true. If there's a bank robbery and the bank robber takes a hostage, and the bank robber starts shooting from behind the hostage and aiming at civilians, and the policeman then tries to shoot the bank robber and kills the hostage, who's guilty of murder? Under the law of every single society, it's the bank robber who's holding the hostage, not the person who shot the bullet that killed the hostage. Now, there's proof today, and you can see it, and I hope CNN runs it. An Indian television station has a video of Hamas fighters planting their rockets in the right next to a hotel, running away, using human shields. So I don't care what Amnesty International says. It is a fact that Hamas uses human shields.
We're showing right now. Go ahead,
Unfortunately, it's also a fact that even if Khaled Mashal were standing on top of a hospital with a sign that says, "Israel, come and get me," it would still be a violation of international law for Israel to blow up that hospital.
That
as a lawyer, you know that.
No, that's absolutely not true.
Article 23 of the Geneva Accords.
Alan and Reza, let me jump in for 1 second. Yeah. Alan and Reza, let me just jump in for 1 second. I want to show the viewers the video that Alan was talking about, which we have shown. And I do want to get, Reza, your views of it. NDTV, an Indian TV station, was staying, some reporters were staying in a hotel, and they did seem to witness fighters, I don't know if they were with Hamas, but with some Palestinian group, putting a rocket. Let's run that tape.
Rocket launching site, that this is an area very heavily built up, a lot of residential and hotel buildings all around. Sort of a bush on top of whatever they've buried under the sand.
So that's the rocket being fired today morning, a day after it was assembled at the exact spot the rocket has been fired. That's the smoke. We just shot a video of it in the immediate aftermath.
Now, Hamas has repeatedly denied using civilians as human shields. I asked an advisor to Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas today for his reaction to that video. Here's the exchange. That area that video was shot, that was packed with civilians. Hamas turned a neighborhood into a target. As a Palestinian, that must bother you.
What bothers me is really the killing of innocent people. Remember one important thing. Gaza is a very crowded area. About 1.9 million Palestinians live in only 370 square kilometers. So wherever you go in Gaza, it's very crowded, whether here or there.
Not true.
Now, obviously, Gaza is densely populated, but that's not to say that rockets have to be fired from a populated neighborhood. Reza, what's your reaction to that NDTV clip and Mohammed Shteya?
There is no question that Hamas fights in residential areas, that it launches attacks against Israel from residential areas. That's an empirical fact. It's a direct violation of the Geneva Accords and international law. It is also a direct violation of the Geneva Accords and international law for Israel to haphazardly target civilian areas when there's a disproportionate number of civilian deaths involved. So again, this is an issue not of moral equivalence. It's just that if we're going to compare Israel's actions to Hamas's and to actually excuse Israel's actions because, you know, Hamas is worse, then let's just compare them equally. Let's make sure that international law applies to both. Let's make sure that both are responsible for their criminal actions.
Okay,
let me explain international law. International law says it's absolutely prohibited ever to use human civilian shields. Ever. There are no qualifications. But Israel has the right, it's a military target, and any rocket is a military target, to respond as long as the value of the military target is proportional to the number of anticipated civilian deaths. Now, if Mashal is standing on top of the building, no. But if he's firing at Israeli soldiers or civilians, then they do have the right.
But Alan, I want to move forward because we're in a ceasefire now.
Right.
So let's say that the ceasefire holds.
Right.
Let's talk about what will happen next. Do you think that there is a way that what Hamas wants, the blockade lifted off of Gaza, can that happen?
Only if they are demilitarized. Hamas has a choice. Demilitarize and end the blockade, or remain militarized and retain a blockade to prevent more rockets from coming in and more concrete to build tunnels.
Okay.
That's their choice.
Reza, what do you think?
I absolutely agree. The lifting of the siege of Gaza has to be conducted in coordination with the demilitarization of Hamas and the acceptance of a unity government. To the larger point here about President Carter's comments, the United States already recognizes Hamas as a legitimate political entity. It did so when it recognized, along with every other country in the world except for Israel, the unity government between Hamas and Fatah in April. And frankly, if the Likud government had also accepted that unity government, I don't think it's an exaggeration to say that we would not be where we are right now.
Very quickly, can you just talk about that unity government?
Yes. I mean, the unity government did not recognize Hamas. It recognized that some members of Hamas, technical people, would be in. But it was the closest we've gotten. Look, let's let Hamas earn its right to legitimacy. Until it gives up its tactic of hiding behind civilians and targeting civilians, it is an outlaw group, should be treated the way pirates have been treated historically. If it earns its right to legitimacy, then Israel and other countries will give it that right.
Gentlemen, we'll leave it there. Alan Dershowitz, Reza Aslan, thank you.